Hello and welcome to Astrology Hotline, the podcast where we answer all your birth chart and astrology questions. Joining me today is Joe G.
Hello, hello.
Hello. And how are you doing, Joe G?
I am good. Sniffling with allergies, but feeling great.
Nice.
Just went to ESR not too long ago. It was amazing to meet a lot of the astrology peeps. Still coming off of that high, really. It's hard to kind of get reintegrated into a world where not everyone is an astrologer.
Oh, God. Sounds like a wonderland. When my son was like 3, I took them to, it was called Great Wolf Lodge up in Traverse City. Mm-hmm. And I remember we got there at like 1 o'clock in the morning. They were like half awake. And I was, taking them up to the room and woke up, and like the first thing that they said was like, what is this? What is this dreamland we're in? And I was like, it was like literally like they thought that they'd woken up in like a dreamland.
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
it was such a great moment, but that's what I imagine, honestly, like an astrology conference to be, which
it really was.
If it wasn't for COVID, I probably would have already been to one by now. But
I honestly cried every day I was there. And this is my Cancer sun and rising for sure.
Yeah.
But just I've been learning astrology for a while, and a lot of these people were just in my computer, and to see them in real life and to have them recognize me, that's even like crazier, But yeah, it was an amazing time.
It's feeling like such a big missing piece for me, like more and more now that like everybody else is getting to do it, getting jealous.
Yeah. Well, next year, let's go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's a priority now. Apparently there's there's a Great Lakes astrology conference that they canceled it in 2021. And I guess they just didn't even try to do it this year. I'm hoping they bring that back, because that was in Ann Arbor, and that's like less than an hour from where I live.
Yeah, so close to me too.
It's like there's no way I would not show up to that one. That's right. That is, you're probably
we're pretty close.
Physically, you're like, you're just like across the
lake.
The lake. Yeah, one of those. Anywho, shall we I think we're just gonna do one question today, keep it simple.
Yeah.
It could be a kind of a biggish question. I guess we'll see where we go with it. But our question comes from Sam, and Sam asks, what planet rules astrology? And I got excited by this question just because I get to do my favorite thing, which is to be like, well, everybody says this, but it's actually this. But even with that kind of perspective, like, all the planets sort of have a role in what astrology is. And maybe even if I were looking at a chart, like what would make someone gravitate towards astrology, or give someone maybe some of the traits of an astrologer. So I figured we maybe talk a little bit about different ideas on this, and maybe some planets you would consider to be more heavily involved in astrology than others.
Yeah. No, you go for it.
Yeah. But maybe we'll start with the simple answer, which
yes, the simple answer is, of course, Mercury.
Mercury, yes. It is.
Let's not get too far from Mercury.
Yes,
I think Mercury
needs to be
is
established out of the gate.
If anyone wants to fight with me, we'll see each other after Mars leaves Cancer. And it's not even there yet, so we'll wait a little while.
Yeah, and even Mercury makes intuitive sense, in that it's the interpreter of symbols in what is astrology, but a set of symbols which we interpret as astrologers and translate.
And that actually brings a very interesting fact. I don't know if we can call it fact, but I just don't want to butcher the name. But there's this guy, Andazar, I think, Alandazar. Andarzar. Andarzagar. One of the Arabic astrologers. He has a list of triplicity the rulers of the triplicities of the houses and each topic they correspond to. And here's what he has to say about the ninth house, which is very interesting because ninth house is usually where we find astrology, learning, higher learning,
Hmm.
faith, and things like that. So he says that the first lord of the triplicity of the place of the journey, which is the ninth house, indicates the journey and its suitability. The second, religion and religious observance and eminence that one obtains in that form. And the
Hmm.
third indicates science, vision, stars slash astrology, and omens and truth and falsehood, which is very interesting because that's the third triplicity ruler that would be responsible for astrology. And although Mercury is the planet that rules astrology, Mercury is not the third participating triplicity ruler of any of the triplicities. So by this technique, using the triplicity lords of the ninth house, Mercury could actually never rule astrology for a specific nativity, which is very
Mm.
um, interesting to think about. And I think this is more
Huh.
so one of those cases where you see like Firmicus Materna saying that the sun and the moon cannot rule the nativity because they rule everything. And I think that could also be a similar case with Mercury, that he cannot rule the astrology of a particular native, or they cannot rule the astrology of a particular native because they rule everything,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
of the astrologies, all of the sciences. So that's my thought. What do you think?
I think that's actually a really good way of looking at it because Mercury, and it's been helpful for me too, just to, I know for a while I was kind of leaning too heavily on like what planet rules the house and like
Hmm.
almost getting like forgetting that Venus is always going to Venus and Mercury's always going to
Yeah.
Mercury. Um, but Mercury has that job of translating everything and
Hmm.
sort of weaving things together into something that can be delivered. And also it has that, the receptive component of like listening to
Yeah.
or seeing and translating, kind of putting the information into a pot and
Hmm.
categorizing it. And for almost everything that astrology does, so there's different layers of it that I want to sort of look at some of the modern takes on what
Hmm.
planets rule astrology,
Yeah.
which sort of makes sense depending on on what angle you're perceiving astrology from. But Mercury has that job of like you wouldn't have any of it uh, without Mercury because you need Mercury to take the sources of information and
Translate it.
translate them, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Even if we're thinking
decide what they mean.
about, I think you're going into outer planet territory, and even if we're
Mm-hmm.
thinking about that, like we can even see the outer planets without Mercury because Mercury are the tools and the gadgets and
Yeah,
the sciences necessary to even tap into that other realm of existence, you know?
yeah.
So, yes, Uranus can participate in the astrology party, but without Mercury, no one is going to get to see Uranus dance around, and
Yeah,
throw a
yeah,
bash.
yeah. And well, I want to jump to Uranus, but I like that you brought up the ninth house because that is probably one of the primary, at least house topic areas that I would look
Yeah.
for astrology for almost every way that you use it too. It's
Hmm.
omens and in kind of meaning making, and I like the idea of the journey too with like
Yeah.
the ninth house, which even maybe very non-traditional modern astrologers will still want to weave a sort of personal narrative around the chart. I think that's one of the big things that astrology is useful for is kind of finding yourself in the context of your journey or your weaving yourself into a quest, if you will.
Yeah.
And speaking of the ninth house, you do have the ninth house is the the house where the sun rejoices,
Yeah.
and the sun is also one of the planets that gets wrapped up in divination because
Hmm.
it has that ability to see. But Mercury is the translator of the vision of the sun, of
Yes.
what the sun knows. So kind of even in that context, you get the Mercury component.
I think it's also fair to say that Mercury does not just translate the sun, but the moon. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's it would be doing a disservice to now talk about the connections to the moon and
Mm,
mysticism, because it's
absolutely.
similar to the thing with Mercury, where a lot of the Mercury significations got imported to Uranus. A lot of the significations of the moon got given to Neptune. And mysticism and that sense of like nebulousness and
Yeah.
the wandering fog of night, and those are all very lunar things.
Oh, yeah.
And you have Mercury be participating in both sects. So like the day sect with the sun and the night sect with the moon is that Mercury is the translator of lights. It really it makes sense of the fog of the night, the irrational and the mystical, but it also makes sense of the very concrete, the visual, and the light.
Hmm.
So I think that, yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
I don't
yeah.
think I gotta say anything else.
Absolutely. Well, they're like the fastest moving. But like traditionally, you would look at the moon and Mercury really for kind of the mind of the individual,
Hmm.
and think about what astrology was and is like a mapping of the life as well, but like the idea that character and the way your mind works is sort of what informs your fate to a large degree. Character
Yeah.
defines your fate. Who you are is
Or
very
fate
much.
defines character.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Who knows?
it's yeah, it's and that's very mercurial territory. Is like
Right?
holding
Both
those
at the same
two
time.
opposites. They're both true.
Hmm.
I think that's because I also think you couldn't really do astrology without Jupiter. Because Jupiter
Yes.
is that, the meaning maker and the, what does it at all mean? Wisdom, the sort of the collection of wisdom and like creating fitting a narrative into a context.
Yeah. And I think our approach to astrology in modern times is a lot more jovial than it used to be, because I
Mm.
think Mercury being completely neutral, it has now like, yeah, your father's gonna die tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah,
Good luck.
exactly. Yeah,
But I
yeah.
think that Jupiter with that wisdom like can like find better ways to communicate that and to really focus on like that empowering that positivity and how
Oh,
to
yeah.
like even overcome it. So yeah. And it's funny that we're in this conversation about triplicity lords too, because if we're thinking about Mercury and the triplicity that they rule, it's the triplicity of air by night, I believe. And Jupiter is the participating ruler in the air triplicity. So if we have like a ninth house that is of the airy nature, then Jupiter would be the planet responsible for astrology and
Yeah.
sciences and divination. So to even just think about that, like as long as you have what is it? Um, an air sign rising, Jupiter will have some sort of say in the astrology that that person or of that thing, you know?
I actually like that you brought that up because traditionally it was Mercury and Saturn was what would make aspects between Mercury and Saturn, or configurations,
Hmm.
strong ones. Together they made was infallible astrologers.
Yeah.
The and you just think about the maybe more ancient approach was sort of to define what the life was, what will and will not happen to you.
Hmm.
Well, will you be eaten by dogs or not?
Yeah.
Or like it's when will you die? And
Is this person worth
yeah,
surviving? Nah.
yeah, yeah. But
Uh,
Jupiter would have that approach of like, well, how can we work with this?
yeah.
What do you need? How do we make the best out of this? How do we improve
Hmm.
circumstances? And that's, I think, how it's definitely how I prefer to approach astrology, and how I think it's become more popular and useful too. And it certainly helps that we have a lot more tools available to help people, I think, in modern times.
Right.
If you were depressed and missing an arm in 800 AD, you're kind of boned because there's not really
Yeah.
a lot of support or options available for you.
Especially if you're not rich. Maybe
Yeah,
if you're rich, you can get away with
yeah, oh yeah,
it.
totally. But now there's a lot we can do.
And it's also goes to say if we're talking about Jupiter's role in astrology, I think it's also the accessibility that we have today. Like
Hmm.
anyone can get an astrology reading. It's not
Yeah.
that hard in comparison to like back then.
Yeah.
You could go to jail and die.
Yeah.
I was listening
Yeah.
to this podcast about Roman laws surrounding magic back in the day. And it's like, yeah, if you're poor, magic is not a thing that you can do. But if you're rich, sure.
Oh yeah.
You will not kill you. It's all good. Do your magic. It's fine. So like to see that inclusivity come in today, I guess that Jupiter's role is bringing that inclusivity, and maybe Saturn's role is bringing the reality
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. And I think precision too. Like Saturn's good
Yeah.
at weeding out
Hmm.
anything really, but ideally, the stuff that doesn't serve the bullshit
Yeah.
or something I've been thinking about a lot lately is focusing in on what actually is necessary or what needs to be delivered, what needs to be said, and what doesn't need to be
Hmm.
said. And even thinking about Saturn in the traditional sort of maybe negative context of a lot of astrology might have had,
Hmm.
has a great application now is in deciding like what to tell someone and what not to tell someone,
Yeah.
or even like how to deliver it. I feel like so
Hmm.
much of a good reading too is like what you don't say to the person. It's like you can look at maybe a placement and see, five different things, a bunch of different possibilities, but then, sort of weeding things out and focusing in on like the reality of a person's life,
Right.
and what is the most likely context for this,
Hmm.
for the manifestation of that given placement to exist in, but also like what's going to be relevant to the person, and what did they ask for, what did they come
Hmm.
in for, and sort of weeding things out instead of just going
Hmm.
everything at them.
Yeah. And I think Saturn too, if we're thinking about how Saturn would do astrology, it's that like sense of if you don't want to know, don't ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
Saturn would definitely be a little bit more of that. Like my job is to like give you what you asked for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did that. Whether
Yeah.
you're pleased with that or not,
Sorry. Yeah.
that's not my problem. And it's funny to think that if we're still jumping around the triplicities, that would be Saturn would be the participating Lord of the Fire triplicity. So
Mm,
the astrology of fire signs would be the more direct, and it's
yeah.
not so far-fetched to think about how a fire sign might just say it.
Yeah. Well, but you'd also get Jupiter too, which is kind of an interesting uh
Is it
counterbalance
participating Lord?
for fire.
Jupiter would be the cooperating, so like whatever the opposite sect depends on the sect. The
It's
by
it's the
all
night sect, right?
Dazargar, it's like the third triplicity ruler, so the one that stays the same regardless of sect.
Okay.
Uh, And for fire would be Saturn.
During the day, right?
Day, night,
Saturn
nope.
by day. Is it Saturn by day and
Saturn
Jupiter by night for firefoot signs?
for fire, it's Sun by day, Jupiter by night, and
Jupiter
then
by night and
Saturn
Saturn
cooperating.
cooperating. That's right.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I just end up sort of I
Forgetting the luminaries, yeah.
well, yeah, yeah, but
I used to do that a lot
yeah,
too because there's so many like things where the luminaries are just like, oh, they're just rule everything. We won't give them these.
yeah. I mean, I guess I just tend to. I don't overemphasize. I probably underemphasize triplicity quite a bit, or
Oh,
I
right.
tend to look at it as kind of like, well, okay, so they all kind of have a relationship with these signs,
Hmm.
and have sort of impact to have, but uh, that is like a
Triplicity fiend.
yeah. Triplicity will drive me nuts because there's like an imbalance with it that sort of leads me into this sort of feedback loop of thinking about it, and it's like for my brain I have to look for a simple sort of softening kind of solution
Hmm.
to it,
Yeah.
but that's almost an aside. It's probably worth noting though that for Cancer rising, which is the rising sign of the cosmos, Jupiter does rule the ninth house, but
Hmm.
it's also the fall of Mercury,
It is also
uh,
the fall of Mercury.
which is interesting to me because there almost seems to be like a symbolism there, like something in my mind that sort of suggests like there are limits to like how much we're supposed to know, maybe about what the
Hmm.
fates have in store. It's almost like the deeper you go into it, the more you try to reach too far into um, the meaning of everything, you
Yeah.
will get lost
And
and
there are things that
forget to
cannot
live.
be explained or cannot be
Yeah.
said or told.
Yeah.
And maybe Mercury and Pisces is very good at that. And I like tapping and
Mm-hmm.
understanding those places, but not everyone else. And it's like going to a country where you don't speak the language
Oh yeah.
and trying to like explain to everybody how you need water.
Yeah. Yeah. Understanding something and communicating it to another person, having a thought and translating it to
Two
something that can
different
be
things.
conveyed to someone else are two very different things. It's the struggle. That's why.
And one of the cool things too, like I don't know if this is what we're doing now, but going by triplicity lords, then the moon would be the cooperating triplicity ruler of water.
Mm,
So that would be the astrology planet for the water risings, which is very interesting.
yeah.
And
Well,
that definitely checks on my own chart as an astrologer myself. Have the moon and Mercury rising, and uh, astrology is, of course, a big topic in my life.
yeah.
Even just the sense of the lunar astrology and what kind of astrology does the moon do. And I think it's a little bit of that Jupiter, of like that caring and sort of inclusive and nurturing. But I think that the moon again can be a little bit of both.
Yeah.
It might even go into that Saturnian space where she does say what needs to be said. She can be a little bit of that like dark mother sort of
Hmm.
energy, but also with like the soothing touch right after. And this is a thing that I always try to do in my readings. I always try to like really focus on how can I say what it is that needs to be said and that person can understand it, but also giving like sort of ways to feel comfortable through that whole thing. And I think that
Yeah.
like lunar astrology is astrology that focuses on comfort.
Oh
Maybe.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I was thinking of the high priestess in tarot, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Which I believe I always get the stuff wrong, but the is the third card
I
in
think
the
it's
tarot in the
I
major
think
arcana.
it is. Yeah.
I could be wrong on that, but I should know by now. But there being kind of a third house dimension
Yeah.
to astrology or divination can be found sort of in the third house.
Oh
And
yes. Oh, and I'm so glad you
mhm,
mentioned that because also like ritualistic practices and
yeah.
worshiping and devotional
Hmm.
practice, which is also a big part of my astrology.
Oh yeah. I guess I think of when I think of the astrology that the moon would do sort of on its own, I almost think of that more necessarily astrology, but astrology like intuitive astrology, or like cutting open a chicken, laying its guts out on the table, and doing
Hmm.
divination from that, almost like an
Right.
intuiting from it, like
Hmm.
maybe not necessarily with like the precision of of Mercury, right? And
Yes.
going through all the
Hmm.
techniques and steps, but like sort of like, what do I get from this? I get this feeling, and from this feeling,
Yeah.
I derive this meaning, and
Ooh, I
like
like that.
yeah, like tarot honestly ends up being probably
Yeah.
more of like a lunar kind of divination where you're putting
Like
the pieces together.
Astrodice.
Yeah. Mhm. Astro
Hmm.
dice. Yeah, I actually just got a set of Astro dice. Sure,
Oh, nice.
fucking awesome. Um, yeah, I love that, and I like being Cancer risings. There's always like a layer of that that you end up having to do with astrology. I think
Hmm.
like you can technique the hell out of a chart, but you have to kind of go to that intuitive, um, that moon place, that lunar sphere where it's like you let stuff just sort of gel and
Hmm.
find the feeling of things, and seeing where that leads you. Like there's an emotional
Right.
component. I,
And I
I
think
get a lot of
too,
feelings from charts, and I feel like I end up reading that as much as I
mhm.
read the technique I'm applying.
Yeah, and I think too with what they usually say about the moon, how she can like hang out with the kings and hang out with the
Hmm.
plebs and the
Oh
people. I
yeah,
think that that's also another part of like lunar astrologies that knowing how to speak with the person that's in front of you, like
absolutely.
and
Yeah,
not being too tied to your own sort of style, or really like willing to bend and morph it and reshape yourself to whatever it is that the person in front of you needs. And I think that the moon is
absolutely.
really good at that.
Yeah, I get jealous of Capricorn sometimes because I know that can be like a Leo quality too. Like they are just who they are all the time. But like
Mhm.
Capricorn will have almost like really Capricorn heavy
I was
people will
born
want to know a
old
lot.
and I will die.
Yeah, yeah. Like what you get is what you get. You came to me, and you came to me to get what I give you. While
That's funny.
I feel like my Cancerian self is, like I'm just adapting to the
Whatever the
circumstances other people
environment.
bring me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, should I be doing that? But there's value there, I think.
Hmm. And I was just thinking, is Venus not the participating triplicity lord of any of the triplicities? So I said in the beginning that it was only Mercury. But I'm thinking that maybe Venus also
Um, Moon is
cannot
participating in
participate.
water. She could be participating in Earth, but I'm
Oh no, actually, it's just in Earth, the participating ruler is Mars.
hmm,
So Venus and Mercury are the two planets that cannot be tied to like an individual's sense of astrology or ninth house by this Al Andazargar
yeah.
Andazargar uh triplicity rulers of the houses
Hmm.
technique. Um, which is very interesting because when I first read the question and I was thinking about the two planets that I definitely feel like are connected to astrology, Venus is also pretty
Hmm.
high up there for me. And especially that sense of like priesthood, like
Mhm.
the astrology of priests. And I even think of talismanic magic and doing astrology that is very like crafty. You're creating something. Even thinking about remediation and healing,
Yeah.
I think those are all more Venusian than mercurial at times, even though we can easily see that in the Virgo side of Mercury. I think that Venus can bring the like sensual or yeah, central a sensorial experience of being in that ritual space and bringing like a new and being the priest or the priestess that facilitates the birth of a spirit into an incarnate form. And I think that that's a very Venusian sort of even thinking about the fifth house and how it's the joy of Venus and you find mediators and those sorts of people there to be the mediator between men and well, not men, because we're past that,
Yeah.
people and God.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, that to me seems like much more Venusian in that like facilitating role. Even thinking about like the way that we do astrology these days, like the one-on-one sort of like Libra, like I'm here to like not make a decision for you, but help you make a decision almost. Yeah,
Well, yeah, yeah. Let's thinking. Got me. I got five thoughts right now. All right, first one. um,
let's go.
I was thinking with Saturn is right. You get that sort of harsh boundary keeper, like you were saying earlier. Like, don't ask unless you want to know. There's like an
Hmm.
imposing quality that astrology can have, where it kind of looks like you almost want to observe caution about what you open the door to. Saturn being like what separates the light from the darkness. But Venus has that quality of being gatekeeper too, but finding the right gate for you, sort of in a
Yes.
way, like
Hmm.
harmonizing you with the right gate, finding the right
Hmm.
fit. Um,
Yeah.
it's a much more pleasant and accommodating kind of gatekeeper. But I know I'm being surprised reading a lot of ancient astrology and finding that Venus got so heavily associated with,
War.
well, with war. That is a thing. But priests, um,
Oh, right, right,
and
right.
ritual and stuff. I was like, oh, really? But then you think about it, and it makes a ton of sense, especially because I always think of like the Anglican Church or the Catholic Church,
Hmm.
like they have different robes for different masses, and like there's this whole visual aesthetic uh, appeal to the ceremony that
Hmm.
is extremely Venusian, and it's meant to
Yeah.
cultivate certain feelings, in everyone, and sort of unite and create a community around it. Which Venus exalts in Pisces. I think I always think of Pisces for that sort of
It's
the
like the
word I'm
marriage with God.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like the like you said, I don't think you used the word gatekeeper, but that facilitating the connection
Hmm.
between God and men, right?
Yeah.
And women, humans, and that being a big component of what astrology does. But then you have traditional, like ancient astrologers were much more often scientists or
Yeah.
mathematicians. They had to be in order to do astrology. Like you had to be
Hmm.
really fucking good at math uh, to do it. And so there's an inherently more scientific approach, I think, to astrology from that
Yeah.
perspective. But having computers, especially having technology, it's almost like there is so much more room for Venus um,
Hmm.
in astrology now than maybe there was before. And I think it always had a role in it. But maybe that could be, sometimes I have to like trudge through ancient texts because they're so like clinical and um sometimes, not always, clinical and like kind of just heavy and like make you feel good hearing about whose babies are going to
People
die.
eating.
And
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
People getting
um
eaten by dogs and beasts and all
yeah,
sorts of other things.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I
uh
find it hilarious,
I mean,
honestly.
it is funny, yeah. uh but that's why you need like Venus sort of to like soften it and even like to find the
Yeah.
humor in it. um
Mhm.
but I think the last thing I was going to say is the weird.
Laughter loving queen.
That's right, it's in the hymn. The moon loves horses too, by the way. I was going to ask you about that. It's totally
Yeah.
unrelated. That might have actually came up for Venus too, but I was trying to think about why Venus or why
It
the
comes
moon
up
would
in
love
the
horses.
it comes up in the sun one, the Venus one, and the moon one, I think. And I think the lover horses is a reference to the sun because horses
Yeah.
are related to the sun.
Mm.
Yeah. Side note.
It's yeah, that's another discussion entirely. Uh, I was gonna say though, the weird sort of overlap there can be with Venus and Mercury, which is kind of
Yeah,
surprising since Venus
they hate each
falls.
other.
They should hate each other, and yet they do so many of the same things. They just do it in a very different way.
But that's probably why they hate each other.
Yeah, I know. This is not how you do it. Yeah. It's,
Can you make it pretty, please?
yeah,
No,
exactly.
we need
No.
it to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like what is it? The old tale of a designer and an architect talking to each
Yeah.
other.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. I haven't heard that one, but that's a perfect
oh
analogy.
really? Oh, that's art's cool.
Mhm.
Jokes for you.
Yeah.
But have we gone through all of the planets? Not
The
Mars.
only one we haven't is Mars, and
Yeah.
that's a hard one to find a obvious role for
I
in
find
astrology.
horror not just because of the book, The Martial Art of Horror, I think is called, but I find that horror
Hmm.
is actually very martial.
The martial art of horror.
Yeah, I think
I haven't
that's
heard of this.
what the book is called.
Hmm.
Patrick Watson recommended it to me. It's a great book.
Oh,
It's something along those lines. I think I'm getting the title a little wrong, but I do find that horror is a very martial sort of approach to astrology,
yeah.
really cutting through time. It's like this time here matters. It's like and there is a little bit of that directness that Saturn has too, But if we're thinking about Saturn as slow increments of time and like really looking at the broadscape of a nativity and like knowing like is this person gonna be like really going back to ancient times, like is this person gonna be eminent or not? Is
Yeah.
it even worth trying to like make sure they survive, or do we just let them die?
Yeah.
These sorts of things. But then Mars, and those are like bigger questions.
Hmm.
Whereas Mars with Horary, I guess it would be those like very in the moment, small. I need to make a decision right now. And even there's the sense of like what is the critical question? Is this critical enough? Is this important enough? Because
Yeah.
I need to know like right this second. I think that would be the Mars of astrology, like the urgency of uh, of moments like horary, and also I guess inceptions and the idea of like casting charts for when you take an action and seeing where that goes.
Yeah. Well, like just the outcome orientation of like horror in particular. It's like,
Yeah.
I want to know the answer to this question. What is the,
Hmm.
that's very Mars is just the facts. Give me what I need.
Yeah.
I don't want anything else. I don't want any of the superfluous
Yes.
bullshit. I just want the answer to the question. Give it to me
Will I win the
or
war or
die.
no?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it is interesting that how Mars will show up like in the Chaldean order, starting like from Aries, right? You like with the decans, you get
Oh,
a
right, right,
Mars
right.
decan, and then it ends with a Mars decan.
Hmm.
Uh, Something I was thinking about a lot because I've been working on this lengthy thing about Mars, and it's turning into specifically about Mars in exaltation and fall, but uh, how much Mars is relevant to the beginning of things as well as the end. Uh,
Mm.
you can think like the inception of a person, not their birth so much as like their conception,
Hmm.
is a competition. It's you know
Yeah.
one sperm against millions of other sperm, all racing towards the egg, and
Hmm.
the one that gets there is the one that fertilizes, and the rest die.
Hmm.
I guess in occasions you get multiple um,
Yeah.
implantations, but there being that struggle and strife and competitive component, and so much astrology is sort of measuring what this against that. If depending on the question, like is the seventh house better situated than the first house, that will tell you who's gonna win this. There's definitely a martial component to astrology, and that sort of with like a delineation. There's you're cutting out a bunch of potentialities. You're
Yeah.
measuring things against other things.
Yeah. And I think too about how sometimes I forget, I want to cite this because it might not represent the entire Vedic tradition, but
Mm.
I think it was Dr. Shankar Adawal.
Mm.
So
Ah,
yeah,
it sounds familiar.
yeah, he wrote well, they wrote, I don't know their gender, but they wrote the Encyclopedia of Vedic Astrology, and there's many different books in that encyclopedia, but it's in the remediation one, I think, that they mention something about Mars being related to math.
Mm.
And just like the scrutiny that math requires is very martial. And I think about that with horary too, and casting lots, especially in like the like medieval tradition, how like lots were such a big part of horary practices and things like that, and how it requires that math and that level
Yeah.
of scrutiny, and like who is really the planet responsible here
Yeah.
sort
Yeah.
of thing, like in
Yeah.
a very like sort of like managerial, like the general is trying to find the culprit who is not working hard enough.
Yeah.
uh
Well, and math is very decisive. Like the
yeah,
questions that you answer are very definitively what they are, and to the exclusion of
of the
everything
rest.
else. Like
Hmm.
you literally can only have one answer. And well, most mathematical equations. I guess you could get into math that I don't know how to do that has
Yeah.
letters in it, and
And
it's not
my
my
fiance is on those all the time.
yeah.
I'm like, this makes no sense. How do
I
you do math without numbers?
I know. And it see, but I always think of Mercury as being tied to math because it's math is
Yeah.
inherently a language. But I mean,
Hmm.
you're always looking at the end of like you with any one topic or subject, like you are going to have more than one planet involved in it, or you're going to have
All
every
of them.
planet involved in it, but just with different,
To different degrees, yeah.
approaches. Yeah.
Hmm.
But you get like usually one that you can sort of put in the lead. Just increasingly how I think of like signs, even.
Yeah.
I was working on not it's a kind of a dignity system. I knew we were talking about that before the show a little bit, how you're
Hmm.
working on one. But I was like trying to rank each planet in each sign, like assuming that every planet has some kind of job in a
Hmm.
sign, but like which one, what's the least suited to a sign, what's the most suited,
Yeah.
and there being sort of like an order to some degree. Uh, yeah, because I mean, you can apply basically every planet to most things.
Hmm.
And some of those planets will be better at the given job than others,
Yeah.
but you can sort of work all of them into it in theory. Um,
Yeah, that's why I think it was important for us to walk through all of the planets
well,
and to see
yeah,
how all of them relate to astrology because they all do, but Mercury is the astrology
I would
planet,
put that's where, yeah, Mercury is
but
is
is the
lead.
manager of astrology,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
all the other planets are,
brings it all together.
yeah, they're helping out. They're the workers.
That reminds me though, we still got to mention the outer planets because
That is
they
true.
are very popular as rulers of astrology. Um,
Yes.
I've heard
And I
all of
think
them
they
in different
all,
contexts. Yeah,
yeah, they all have like a very a very extensive history of being linked to astrology. And
yeah,
I think that, and I don't know how I feel about that because I think that a lot of it comes from people who liked the planet and started making that their focal point in
yeah,
their astrology. And I think that that just shows that this is the kind of astrology that that planet does, but that doesn't mean that that planet rules astrology.
yeah,
And I think it's a similar thing with like Uranus, maybe is similar to how Saturn and Mercury would do astrology in that very like direct sort of clinical way. But with Uranus, there can be the like sort of innovative mind and
yeah.
the, the future and a lot of like the modern astrology that we see like um what's his name? I always forget. The David Cochrane with his vibrational astrology is very
Hmm.
Uranian type of astrology and all of those sort of how astrology goes through iterations of trying to become more and more scientific, and they will pull apart like old pieces of astrology to create something new. I think that that's the maybe the role of Uranus in astrology as also like an outer planet and ruling like bigger chunks of time and history. Um, it can be more of that like, oh, we need to shake things up a little bit so we can come up with new techniques. Like, oh, why not bring asteroids into the mix? Why not bring midpoints? Why not bring this
Yeah,
and bring that? I think that that could be Uranus. What do you think?
yeah. I'm sort of regretting because actually Uranian astrology is probably one of the schools I know the least about.
Hmm.
And I intended to do some research before recording this, but I didn't do that. But I'm thinking about in terms of
I think Uranian astrology is vibrational astrology.
yeah,
Yeah.
it might be. I almost don't want to speak to it too much because I
Yeah.
will most
You don't
likely be
know.
wrong.
Yeah. Hmm.
But I was thinking about it in terms of how even like while I would still kind of put technology, at least for most purposes, in kind of the sphere of Mercury to a large
Hmm.
degree, those like rapid sort of sudden advances, there's definitely Uranus um, having a strong relationship to that. And the way that technology has sort of, maybe like I said before, sort of liberated, not even liberated, I guess want to use that word because you always want to use it with Uranus, but how,
Mhm.
because of technology, poets and artists are able to do astrology as opposed to just scientists.
Yes.
Um, Also, astrologers are kind of weirdos
Yeah.
in terms of mainstream society, which there's
Mhm.
definitely that Uranus component. Um, but also, astrology readings can have a very Uranus kind of effect where they can evoke sudden changes in a person or sudden rapid insights,
Mhm.
even shift your direction in life. Yeah, I know when I
Right.
got think my first like really amazing astrology reading was like wow,
Mhm.
I must learn more, and it definitely did end up changing my trajectory in a big
Nice.
way. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think
I
that
became an astrologer under a Uranus transit too. Now thinking about
I know I'm trying
that.
to think of mine. I don't know. Uranus transits are so long. It's it's hard for me to
Mhm.
uh find. Actually, I don't know if I paid attention to Uranus at the time, but where was I going with it? Lost my train of thought. I know I'm already getting tired too. Um, you infected me. You yawn. Okay. uh, uh, yeah, and then Neptune, I've heard get
Yes.
associated with astrology, maybe less often.
I
Um,
feel like the no, 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 I feel like I keep cutting you off. You go first.
I don't know. I was gonna say like yeah, I guess astrology can sort of have that mystical Neptunian quality and sort of dissolve the boundary between what we think we should be able to see and have
Hmm.
connection with then and what's beyond, but it can get rather muddied and confusing too, especially
Yeah.
when you're not using Mercury and Saturn enough maybe in your astrology you
Yes.
can get
Hmm. Very lost.
yeah, for sure, and you can get some pretty wild wonky stuff. um so
Yeah.
while I would say Neptune has a role to play in astrology, and while for me, when it registered to me that astrology like worked, it was like a revelation, or like it was like it was like grabbing something out of the ether and like having it to hold. Like I got to like I got
Yeah.
a souvenir from the spirit realm or something. Like
Hmm.
it's like this actually works. That means that there's something more to reality than what we can see and taste and touch, and that
Right.
was game changing for me. But I almost want to say that the way that Neptune can be problematic for Mercury, it can be problematic for astrology sometimes, where
Yeah.
you when you grab too much of everything and just sort of you'll get astrologers who it just sounds like they're using maybe a planet or a transit to just talk about whatever they want to talk about, um, which we can all do to some degree, I guess. Like, it can be a
Yeah.
facilitator for a lot of different conversations, but when you're not really applying um,
Hmm.
actual techniques or actual, not having respect to maybe the lineage of it when
Yeah.
you're inventing your own stuff.
Yeah, because I think when you like earlier when we were talking about like moon astrology and we talked
Mm-hmm.
about intuitive astrology, that's the kind of astrology that I would really attribute to Neptune as well.
Yeah.
And I guess now we can see how Neptune and the moon get
Mm-hmm.
some mix-ups every now and then because it's that one modality of astrology where you can't know if the practitioner is actually good until you
Yeah.
have a reading. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
that Neptune mystery. Like, can they tap into the mystery or can they not tap into the mystery? Do they need to know or do they not need to know?
Yeah.
Because I know some crazy accurate intuitive astrologers who know barely any theory, especially like traditional astrology theory. And they're still great and they're still
Mm-hmm.
somehow can tap into that. Who knows how? Neptune does. But that's one of the risks of Neptune. It's like not knowing. You like really can't know until you get here. And then when you get here, you will get more confused.
Yeah.
But maybe you'll come out with an answer.
Yeah, yeah. There, I don't know.
It's
There.
funny because no. Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I think I was cutting you off that time.
Oh no, it's because I was gonna say that we talked about earlier. I don't know if we talked about this while we were recording or not, but I'm working on that um, proposed dignity system for the outer planets
Mm,
for a talk that I'm giving for KazimiCon coming soon. And Neptune was one of the planets that I was like, this makes so much sense. Because basically, I'll give a brief if that's fine.
yeah,
I'm promising I'm not trying to pitch my own ideas.
you're allowed to.
But it really, it really does go with this. Because basically, what I'm suggesting is the worship scheme. It's like thinking of the outer planets as the gods of the gods and how and which god prays to which god.
Mm,
And what I largely base it off of the Thema Mundi. And of course, if we follow the Thema Mundi, then we leave Neptune in Pisces, exactly where modern people think. But the way that I'm doing it is that I'm also not just looking into Pisces, but to Jupiter, as in like Jupiter prays to Neptune. That's Jupiter's god sort of thing.
mm.
And to then think of what like, I guess, because there's always the opposition. So like, what would the detriment or the fall of this worship be like? And then you get to Mercury. And I was thinking like Mercury curses Neptune.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And like this can really illustrate why that would be the case because Neptune makes no sense. And for Mercury, a planet that's supposed to make sense of things, to interact with it, and I guess to see how Mercury, as the ruler of astrology, and trying to think of how Neptune astrology would be like, it would be you'd think that it would be very challenging astrology because it's that kind of astrology that you can never really know. It can be so poetic and so evocative, but it really like the words themselves don't really matter. It's more so about that moment and being in that like mystical space where when you come back, you can't even explain what your experience was because you just can't. And I think that's a very good way to explain why this sort of like tension exists between Mercury and Neptune.
Yeah. Well, and you get that often actually with like the opposite planet in any sort of relationship that they do actually sort of play this sort of joint role on maybe
Hmm.
many important things.
Yeah.
Um, but I was just thinking about how a lot of my introduction to divination and astrology even was through like tarot readers and psychics even who were pulling knowledge from somewhere that I couldn't see, somewhere that was,
Yeah.
very that you could not point to as like a source even.
Hmm.
And I think for a lot of the more intuitive astrologers that I know, there is a degree of where you're looking at the chart, but there's a degree to which it's just like what comes in.
Yeah.
Like the chart sort of helps you set the parameters, maybe gives you like a portal,
Yeah.
into
It's
the
like a
person.
key.
Yeah. And there's like a level of trust that I think that
Hmm.
type of astrologer has to like, oh, well, the answers will just sort of come
Oh, for
once the
sure.
portal's opened, which I don't
Hmm.
quite have. I am a little more,
Not at all.
though I mean, that will inevitably happen during a consultation, but I
Yeah.
want to Mercury and Saturn before. I
Hmm.
want to know, like, I want to, know as much as I can
Hmm.
beforehand or rely on techniques and things that I can cite for where I'm getting a piece of information from. Uh, but there's, undeniably like a Neptunian component. And even just like a lot of like we didn't get to be there for like how astrology was evolved and how people came up with like the whole system. Like at some point, it had to be somebody doing what we'd probably call now just like channeling stuff,
Yeah.
like Sabian symbols, which I don't particularly use, but was just who was it? I can't remember the guy's name.
Ooh.
Who basically just channeled the images from each degree.
Daniel
And
Jamario? Daniel Jamario? I think it
that
might be.
sounds about right. Yeah, it could be right.
Yeah.
I don't know, but
Somebody did.
somebody did it.
It was a group of people, I
Yeah.
believe, actually.
But then even when you're like studying the decans too, like they're describing images for all the decans.
Hmm.
And what are they doing other than like they're not seeing the image in the sky? They didn't like find it in some tablet buried
Yeah.
in the ground somewhere. Like they conjured it
Hmm.
through connecting with, the symbols and the meanings of that slice of the sky,
Hmm.
what it meant to them, and the sort of collection of all those different images or all those different maybe channelings and intuitations. Can't think
Yeah.
of a word for that. The stuff that we just sort of pulled out of the sky, um,
Hmm.
and sort of forged into a kind of science, is there's undeniably that Neptunian component that at some point somebody has to reach into the mist and pull something out and make some sense out of it.
Right.
And I think, I guess that's got to be the Neptune component.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't think any other planet really does that.
yeah,
That's really one of the things that I'm like, that's what we need Neptune for.
yeah,
No one else can do that.
yeah.
But Pluto, then, I guess.
Then Pluto, which
Pluto for me is like the most easy. Like evolutionary astrology is just
mhm,
so focused on Pluto that it's
yeah,
like, that's Pluto's astrology.
yeah, yeah,
And really that sort of like mental alchemy sort of effort to transform and transmute and recycle, I guess, moments in life and um, really change and go through that, like go through the depths and come back alive and explore
yeah,
the depths even and uncover things. And these are like they're things of the heart. They're not things um, of matter, really. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and Pluto, right? Like it is. I know that evolutionary astrologers sort of they treat it as kind of that, as almost like the way Vedic astrology will use the moon as sort of like a secondary ascendant. I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever heard an evolutionary astrologer say that about Pluto, but they are treating it kind of that way in the sense that
Yeah.
it's like a focal point from which you read the rest of the chart.
Hmm.
And sort of brings me back to that theme of like what you're trying to get out of the astrology that you're doing. I mean, is going to probably
Affect what you
inform,
focus on.
yeah, what you focus on, what kind of planet you're using, or the energy that you're bringing to a reading. But there is also
Hmm.
that theme around Pluto of being the what used to be maybe Saturn's role, to some degree, but that sort of,
To
you know,
corrupt and limit.
well, if you think of it as like the uh in the sort of ancient cosmology, you had the soul sort of descending from the heavens, from the
Oh, right, right,
cosmos,
right.
and entering into the solar sphere. And Pluto being maybe the first body that you, in maybe a modern scheme, would enter through.
And that's
And
kind of weird though, because like now they keep adding more and more planets because there's like
yeah,
Haumea, Makemake,
oh
and
yeah,
Eris and all of those. And I'm like, which one is the first stop?
yeah, yeah. Well, it sort of shows up with like Plutonian themes and stuff, and obviously we have to draw a boundary somewhere. And I guess I'm more open to
Mhm.
the idea that that can change.
Yeah,
Um, the
the first stop that the soul makes.
yeah, maybe the soul can make multiple stops, or that can evolve, and
Yeah,
that
the process
being
can get longer, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Uh, but even just like Pluto and like the idea of Hades and like the underworld and going back to the place from which you came. When you die, you go to the underworld, right?
Hmm.
The afterlife, which is presumably
Yeah.
where you come from. So
But even in like what is it in Kabbalah studies, there's if you're thinking about Chaldean order and things like that too,
mhm,
there is dot, like that space where it's emptiness and it's
mhm.
the void. And I think that all in my theories, all the outer planets belong to that sort of space. And
Yeah,
it's not like that space wasn't accounted for by the ancients. Like the soul does come from that nothing.
Yeah.
It just so happens that that nothing is actually a lot more full than we anticipated.
Yeah.
There's a lot more things in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is it nothing, or is it uh, a bunch of shit that we don't that isn't
See.
doesn't belong to our sphere? To
Yeah,
yeah.
uh-huh.
Um, but even just maybe thinking about it in those terms of the evolutionary component of Pluto and how it's a way that I tend to look at the outer planets more and more as sort of altering the sign, and maybe even like changing it in a way, changing the significations of that sign, or at least our experience of them in a way that could be, I mean, almost intuitively more permanent. Uh,
Right,
Not that like Pluto going through Capricorn changes fundamentally what Capricorn represents, but like it kind of has to change our relationship with Capricorn,
right.
at least for a generation or several generations, while people who lived that transit are still alive, which is inherently going to have like an impact down the line, which is maybe more of a digression on Pluto than I intended. But it,
No, but I think that if we're speaking of astrology and Pluto's role in
mm-hmm,
astrology, I think it is like the fact that astrology does transcend these sort of times and these really long um yeah, these really long eras. And
yeah,
like if we're thinking about how astrology also has the power to transform fate even,
mm-hmm,
like does knowing your fate, does it allow for that mental alchemy to actually happen?
yeah,
And I feel like those are very like plutonic or plutonian questions. Like can I actually recycle this,
yeah,
or is this really just trash?
yeah. If I
And I
introduce
think
this
that
mutation into the organism,
yeah,
will it turn
like
inside out and die, or will it
yeah, similar
bring
to like with
superpowers?
Uranus and like adding in the new things and the asteroids and all of that. And I think Pluto also adds in the new, but it asks a question that Uranus might not. That is what it is that we still get to keep from the previous one. Uranus is just like, ah, fuck this.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but maybe Pluto is like, what of this still belongs here? What can we take forward? Because I think
yeah,
that if we're thinking from of Pluto and especially in an evolutionary sense, it's that sense of like evolution. What is the skill that actually helped me get here and probably will continue to like make me evolve? Um, and what are those skills that do not? Like it's like the natural selection process, I guess, Pluto.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I love that actually. Natural selection. I because that is such a component of evolution, and I there's so many themes that come up around Pluto that point to evolution and the way that
Mhm.
evolution works, and that like you sort of uh isolate maybe it's not exactly it, but like you introduce a mutation and you
Yeah.
see if it works.
Fuck things up.
Yeah, yeah, you fuck it up and just kind of see what happens, and that's almost like a there's an indifference almost to Pluto, but
Yeah.
there's like a purposefulness, like where it is intended to reach um a goal of what, who knows, but a goal
Yeah.
of evolving.
Yeah. What survives the
Yeah,
corruption? Like that's the good thing. That's
yeah,
the thing we'll keep.
yeah. Or you have to take something to an extreme um to highlight what is and is not useful about something,
Hmm.
which I often find that I use that mode of thinking in astrology a lot, is like in it's even the way that it's represented in a lot of ancient texts, like getting eaten by dogs. Like how many people with the ruler of the 12th and the first are going to be eaten by dogs? Probably not most of them, but
Yeah.
there's something about that that is maybe an extreme version of what it does represent, and helps you understand what it does mean, but you have to kind of draw it to its
Hmm.
most extreme incarnation in order to differentiate it from other things.
Yeah.
Um, that's why sometimes I wonder if Pluto's not more of a friend to Mercury than maybe Uranus. Pluto Mercury to me seem to have more in
Hmm.
common in a lot of ways, in that like they both
The
have something to do
double
with drawing
bodiedness.
distinction.
The
Yeah,
double bodiedness of it all.
yeah. I think yeah. We talked about this before.
Yeah, it is a
Uh,
double body planet.
I yeah. I was oh getting off track. Yeah, they're being something to drawing distinctions with
Yeah.
Pluto and doing it in a way that is sort of messed up and painful and too much sometimes, but that can
I think
sometimes lead
of
you to
it
the most
as
clarity.
I think of it as the sun too.
Mm,
Like Pluto's relationship to the sun. And
mm.
again, I'm gonna bring in my talk just because
Oh
I've
yeah,
been like really deep in it.
talk about it. Yeah, yeah.
But
That's why you're here.
if we if we continue with that whole like Thema Mundi scheme, then Pluto of course goes to Aries, not Scorpio.
Hmm.
And then if we're thinking about that, like who prays to Pluto, then it could be Mars and the Sun because those are the two planets that have like really strong dignity in Aries.
Yeah,
And I really think about like spring and that like the the drive that everything in life has to go to survive spring because spring is yes it is the coming of new life but it's also a very like aggressive process and it's very competitive. It's like
yeah.
who gets to survive the winter.
It's a testing ground, you
Yeah,
know.
so and to see the sun and thinking about like that with the sun too and the whole combustion process and having planets like disappear and quote unquote die temporarily and then come off of that
Hmm.
process like reborn from the rays of the sun like a new shiny sword sort of thing just coming off of the fire. And I think um that's a very Pluto thing too. Like that whole sort of like the Phoenix sort of story is very interesting.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
and what is in reality our biggest source of radiation? Like at the end of the day,
the
it's the
sun.
sun. Yeah. Pluto is like a artificial, like, you know, the fusion and the fission and
Hmm.
the ways we maybe try to replicate the power of the sun, but the sun actually does has a Pluto in its core, if you will, even though
Hmm.
I don't know that it's
And even historically too, if we think about Pluto, the god was linked to gold and precious things and
yeah,
everything that's below the ground and wealth,
he was pretty
which are
greedy
all
too, right?
very jovial, oh, not jovial, solar words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well, and that's what maybe leads me back to Mercury too a little bit with Pluto is that it
yeah.
has this relationship with all of the planets that makes it hard for me to like decide like, oh, which one does it pair best with, or um yeah, because it seems to draw something out of all of them
Hmm.
in its own way, something intense and extreme that can kind of uh isolate the planet and set it apart from others. Um, but I can't like link it to only being Mars like or only being
Yeah.
like one specifically.
And I like that you bring the Sun Mercury thing too, because like Mercury is tidally locked to the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Like Pluto's moon, Charon, is also tidally locked to Pluto.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so it really is
It's
like
a
that
good.
sort of like relationship. I think that Pluto, above all, is the planet of relationship and oh, like one of the planets of relationship. It's really speaks
Yeah,
of the internal versus external a world. But I think if we're talking about astrology, getting back on topic, is that it can also be the astrology of building relationship with yourself and like really getting to know um, the depths of who you are.
yeah,
And I think that level of exploration is very gruesome because you get to face and see a lot of like things that, quite frankly, you probably hate about yourself.
yeah.
And coming to peace with that is that sort of like Phoenix moment of the planet going through the Kazemi and coming out
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. You know?
Yeah. Well, there's like a death
Yeah.
process to it as well. Like there's a dispelling of illusions, even like about
Yeah.
yourself, and often you know learn the most about yourself either through extreme circumstances. Sorry. um, where you're sort of set in contrast to something else, but often in relationships too. Jeez. In relationships, like, you learn about yourself through what you are not, or other people show you even elements of yourself that maybe you didn't think were there, based on like what they see in you, or and I, like most people, thought it was really cool when we found that Pluto had a heart, right? And
Right?
there being that like weird twisted dimension to Pluto, which is like the Lord of the Underworld, with a giant, I don't know what actual color it is, but big red pink heart.
I think it's a white heart, no?
It might be, like, in contrast to like a kind of reddish,
like the red outside, yeah.
But it's
the heart of ice.
Yeah. It makes me think
the heart of ice.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you know, but Pluto apparently has ice volcanoes, which are the coolest things I've ever heard about. I think Ceres also has ice volcanoes, which is really cool.
I know. I want to know what to do with Ceres and all this, because I feel like Ceres should be more relevant, and yet I still don't know what to do with it. I've been trying to study it and like look at its transits, and I don't know. But shoot, I had one final thing to add. Oh yeah, I was going to say that it makes me think of like old cartoons where you had like the big mean biker, like in Looney Tunes, and then you'd see that they have like a tattoo of like "I love mom" or something on their shoulder, like that, like soft, gushy side, like all villains ultimately have. I just watched The Joker recently, which is like an older movie. I think, when did that come out? Maybe only a couple years ago. The one with
the newest one?
Yeah, the one with Joaquin Phoenix. Speaking of phoenixes.
I wasn't in love with that movie, but that's besides the point.
It wasn't like an objectively good movie. I found it interesting just because I like the villains side of stories. I like villains. They're interesting to me. And I like when they're explored in more depth and nuance.
Cancers and their Capricorn 7th house.
Yeah. Let me love you, Saturn. I know there's something underneath that hard shell.
Let me fix you.
Yeah.
Hilarious. I say that as a Cancer too. I just want everyone to know.
Yeah. But
I think we made it. We went through all the planets.
And I think we did a mini planets episode probably in the process.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. But that's probably a good place to wrap it up, because I'm realizing we spent over an hour on this. Wow. I think
we did. And I think we also gave people a lot of resources to look at their own chart, even look at like that third participating lord of your ninth house and see which planet that is, and see if our description of astrology matches how you experience it, or if you have any outer planets in your ninth house. See if what we said about the outer planets also has something to do with how you do or receive astrology. I'd love to hear what people have to say about this one.
Yeah, you can please share your thoughts. Tell us what's going on with your ninth house and how you came into astrology, how you relate to astrology, how you use it even. You can you can tweet at either of us, right? I'm Kyle V. Pierce on Twitter. Though I know you're taking a little bit of a Twitter break right now.
Yes, I'm on a Mars starvation. And I am not allowed to tweet until March of 2023. So if you send me a message, please make it a DM. Otherwise, I will not answer.
Yeah, you can DM Joe G. What's your Twitter handle?
It's Astro Boy with an I, Joe G, all together. And yes.
You can also, I forget, and I probably shouldn't, that the podcast has a Twitter as well. And I will see it if you tag the Astrology Hotline in a tweet. But you can also shoot us an email at astrologyhotlinepod@gmail.com. You can also send questions there, or just share your random thoughts. I will always be interested in those.
Hmm.
Um, well, yeah. So shall we call it a day
I think
on this
so.
podcast? What do you got going on right now?
Well, I have Kazemi Khan coming up soon with my talk on a proposed rulership system for the outer planets, like I've mentioned it a couple times. Um, do I talk about what the talk is about?
Whatever you want to talk about.
Beyond
Yeah.
that, yeah. So I've just done a lot of thinking about how to integrate the outer planets and how the ancients might have done it, and that's kind of like my process through preparing for this talk. It was just like I know that if the ancients knew about these planets, they would not think they're not doing anything.
Oh
So
yeah.
how would they implement that? And that's been the thought that kind of guided me through it, and just trying to understand. Um, the outer planets with a little bit more nuance as opposed to just looking at them by transit and like just saying like Pluto will do this to every planet. I'm very much interested in like the relationships between the inner planets and the outer planets and like who gets along with Pluto, who doesn't, and those sorts of like um, fun explorations and how to tie all of that into the 12 parts and
Mm.
seeing the outer planets move to through the 12 parts and using that as a way to dignify them in a way or another. So that's what my talk is about.
It
And
sounds really
beyond.
cool.
Oh,
I
thank you.
how do I participate in, or how do I get to view or
Yeah,
listen to
so
this
Kazemi
Kazemi
Con,
Khan?
I believe it's free.
Mm.
And you can follow them on Twitter. Give me a second. I think their handle is just Kazemi Con. And if you search Kazemi Con, you're probably gonna find it. Oh yeah, their handle is at Kazemi Con. It should be super easy. And the talk is happening October 21st and 22nd. I think I'm on the 22nd. Alongside a whole bunch of cool people. And yeah, beyond that, Astrology Hub is working on their reading platform, and I'm super involved in the process. We're doing beta tests, um, and I've been giving a lot of readings. Unfortunately, I cannot open it up for the world, but soon enough, I'm thinking at around um, November, December will be open for the world,
Mm.
and people will be able to book with me through them. It's been a great time. I'd definitely be excited for it. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. And playing with AI image generation for
Yeah,
talismanic magic.
I know. It's a shame that you're not on the Twitter right now, because you shared some of the your beautiful AI generated images. Was it yesterday? And
Yeah,
they were
yesterday.
amazing. And I wish, yeah, they should be shared with the world.
They will be shared. Right now I'm playing with like building my own style because you can feed your own artwork to the AI and it
Mm.
will learn how to make art like you do.
Oh wow.
So I'm taking that this Mercury, not Mercury, Mars retrograde, especially as it rules my fifth house and my 10th house, to really like be behind the scenes and find my symbolic language and my style and the aesthetics of how I'm gonna be making talismans. But I'd
Nice.
definitely be excited because there's gonna be a lot more there's gonna be some for sale soon because I haven't really done commercial talismans yet, and this is a big help in making that a reality. So get excited.
I'm excited. I've been waiting for you to start commercializing your talisman making, because I
Thank you.
don't have time to learn it yet. But I'm now that I'm learning the decans and like getting really deep into them, I
Hmm.
probably gonna start experimenting with it a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll have to pick your mind for advice, though. I don't want to accidentally make a talisman that will. Uh,
The best learning experience, and I say this for you and everybody, is when you fuck up. When you hit that one talisman that ruins everything, you're like, oh, I get it now.
I've already had to learn everything that way, though. Can I? Is there something I can learn by not fucking up?
It would be great if we could, but I'm not sure.
Always got to be the hard way.
Right.
All right. Well,
what about you? What are you up to?
I am doing just lots of detail work right now, trying to get my site like functioning right. It's a lot of boring stuff. It's not like the fun, sexy stuff of astrology, though I am starting to do some writing. Should have some horoscopes coming out, weekly horoscopes, which would be nice. I think I'm going to start doing, just because we've been falling a little behind on regular episodes of Astrology Hotline. I'm going to start supplementing with kind of a weekly forecast, probably be shorter episodes. But and other than that, I am offering right now until Mars goes retrograde. So that is what Halloween. Offering 20% discount to listeners of the podcast.
Nice.
Yeah, until Mars goes retrograde. So
that's coming up soon.
Jump in on that. I can't remember the name of the promo code that I made for it.
Oh,
I have it somewhere, but just look in the show notes. You can take that extra step if you want to use it. That will be there. And as always, you can book a reading with me at my website, KylePierceAstrologer.com. And if you want to learn how to develop a remedial practice based on your birth chart, I am publishing some articles on that, but you can also get a reading with me, and you just say that that's like the focus you want. And I am going to probably teach you a bit about remediating your chart in any reading, but I think taking the proactive approach to readings has really been making me happy lately. I like giving people stuff that they can do.
Homework. Yeah.
Homework. And I've been getting great feedback on it, getting good results. So don't let your shitty Mars placement be the doom of your life. Take action on it. Yeah. But yeah, I think that'll do it. And yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Thanks so much for joining me again today, Joe G.
Of course.
And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
And if you have a question you'd like to hear answered on Astrology Hotline, send us an email at astrologyhotlinepod@gmail.com.